Okay.
Do you see the slide?
Yep, that's the slide. Well, Chris, thank you. Friends at the CIE, it's my pleasure to be here again today to share with you some thoughts, observations, and if there are any questions down the road, we'll answer some questions. So as you can see, by now, the COVID has been with us for more than a year. Literally speaking, maybe it's 13, 14 months by now. And many of you, maybe like me, especially those people, the first generation from China, have not been back for the whole year. And to be fair, for me, even though I've been in workforce for more than 30 years, this is the longest period of time I have not been visiting my parents. So it's certainly a pretty tough but fast-moving year. Since COVID-19 hit us, many of us, I guess the feeling is it's a traumatic but also very significant. It has a huge impact on us as an individual and the society or as a workforce. I guess by now it's hard to imagine when this coronavirus crisis will end, especially with what you've seen on the news, what's going on in India. That's really a sad story. It may take a while. And many people, including me myself, would ask, are things will be back to normal, or what we're experiencing is more permanent? So nevertheless, there are a lot of things that are changing. There's a lot of things are still going to be changed, and a new normal is formed. In the past several months, except for the general interactions with some companies in the semiconductor industry that I have always been doing in my past, I guess, 20 some years. Since I'm actively involved in some investment opportunities, especially with the, small, medium-sized companies, I had the chance, or I have got the chance or opportunities to interact with many companies, many people in the business. And interestingly, in past several months, I have also got the opportunity to interact with some very talented people. Many of them are Chinese, with a Chinese background, who are seeking advice, suggestions on how to advance their career, especially with the COVID hits us. Or in a couple of cases, I was invited to have a one-on-one, like a Zoom meeting with them, with individual, to prepare them for the important presentations, for example, join a new company, or be interviewed for senior manager position. So what I will be sharing with you today are what I have learned, what I have observed, or what I've seen from those interactions, and hope will generate some thoughts, and even better, if can trigger some thoughts and turn that into actions. I will warn you, what I will be sharing with you is more generic, high level. If you have questions in details or specific suggestions or thoughts needed, you can contact me at any time. So let's go to the next slide, please, Chris. Okay, we talked about the changes. COVID has changed the world. I guess you can click like 3 or 4 times to. It has changed in our economic situation. You saw the roller coaster type of rolling of the economies. When you still remember, the business was down by 20, 30, 40% about a year ago this time. And then you also remember, or just seen, the business coming back. And when you talk to some so-called economics, or if you listen to some analysts saying, the economy is coming back very strongly, especially the first quarter and the second quarter. Meanwhile, there are a lot of other habits or so-called how we do things have been changed. Taking medical, for example, I guess many of you have not been to the clinics in the whole year. For example, routinely in the past, whenever there's something happens, you would like to go to the clinic or go to the hospital right away. But with the COVID situation, we have postponed our trips, non-critical trips to clinics. And meanwhile, talk to the doctors online or Zoom meeting is become a norm or new normal. And when we talked about how we shop, how the retail business is doing, I guess more and more people are relying on the internet to buy stuff, even the groceries. And then when we talked about education, the change on that side is even more dramatic. Many of you have the kids, like I have 2 teenagers. They have spent almost a whole year with me. At the very beginning, I have to say, I feel pretty comfortable, but some of my kids, well, one of my kids feel like a really easy about that, because in the past 10, 15 years, I've always been traveling, and all of a sudden I'm locked at home all day long. But the good news is, as many of you have been noticed, with their schooling remotely or from home, as a parent, we have getting more time, spend time with them, quality time with them, enjoying time with them, taking them out for jogging, biking, for me, kayaking, and other activities. I simply love that. But meanwhile, for a lot of other students have been impacted negatively because of those changes. For example, new college students, the first year there, the experience would be totally different. And the impact on the education is just barely get started. And we will see more things will be happening. So can you keep on? The past year, how we socialize with the people. To be frank with you, just start from last week, I have restarted like a physical meeting with ex-colleagues or with a group of people, simply because of we all feel, after taking the second vaccine, we just feel like, hey, it's safer now, feels like that, to go out. So overall, it's changed a lot. But the biggest change to all of us, especially those audience, is how we work. So do you mind click one more, please? In the past 30, 40 years, we're so used to work in a cubicle, corporate world. And now in the barely past year, how we work is pretty much like this. We look, 40% of the Americans' workforce are now working remotely. And I bet majority of the audience here are working from home. And this is tough, simply because of what we've been taking for granted in the past so many years, like from 8 or 9 to the 5 or 6 o'clock, you go to the office. That practice has been disrupted. Instead, we woke up, check into the email first thing in the morning. We check out our emails or join a webinar or Zoom meetings during the lunchtime. And also the last thing you do in many cases before you go to the sleep is also checking the email. So there are some significant changes into our work life. And some of them, those changes will stay with us for long. So Chris, one more slide, please. On this slide, I will talk about several things that I have noticed through those interactions with people or talking to different companies. I will touch on the pandemic changes caused by pandemic. They changed how we work, how a corporation is run by executives, by the owners, and also how a company is choose their talent or how to qualify to be called a talent and advance your career. So I will touch on 3 topics on this one. So first click, please. how we work. So the most significant changes is most of us work from home. And there are many aspects of this. One, the good side about it, we have flexible working hours. And for example, if you have kids to attend, you can do that. And then you need to come back to work. And as mentioned, if you have some others, you need to drop off a kid or pick them up or need to cook for them, you're flexible. And counter to many people's thought, because at the very beginning, when the COVID hit us, many people, me myself included, were thinking this, okay, working from home would be counterproductive. People will get bored. The teamwork or interaction would be a disaster. Guess what? People are creative. All of us are very resilient. Within a course of several months, people quickly figured out how to use the technologies, Zoom meeting, WebEx, how to manage the time while they are doing the work with the kids running around behind them. Behind their chairs, and people figured out pretty nicely. And after a whole year, there are many studies show the productivity, counter to many people's intuition or the doubts, the productivity has been improved in many cases. Not every case is for sure, but in many cases. And this triggered many thoughts that even post-pandemic, the working from home may stay there for long. And in some surveys, like 70% of the people who are working from home now are saying they prefer to have a hybrid model of work, meaning they go to the office 2-3 times a week, but rest of the time they would prefer to work from home. And many companies, as far as I'm aware of, are actively evaluating the possibilities or abilities of doing so, including how to manage the offices, how to manage their IT strategy to support this type of changes. Flexible hours certainly work out really well for many people, but meanwhile, there's another risk or the concerns over there, which is a distorted sense of time. Many of you guys may feel this, like every day repeats itself. Getting up, breakfast, Zoom meeting, Zoom meeting, Zoom meeting. A day could pass very quickly, could pass really slowly. But after the whole week is down, you couldn't remember which day you did what. That's one thing. Another is a very interesting study by the Harvard Business School using their methodology, tracking about 3 million employees around the world. They found that pandemic workday was on average 48 minutes longer than when the employee working in the office. Surprise. So that is another reason why I was saying the productivity actually was even higher. And in some other studies saying 40% of the people, since that time was passing more slowly than usual, and another 40% felt it was moving faster. Interestingly, the difference came down to a few factors. For people who are busy, who are satisfied with their social interactions, with the work, with the job, are not that stressful, time spent alone, the time passed pretty fast. And for some other guys, time moved slowly. So these are some changes happening around us. And also there's some other things we have noticed. For example, working from home, some challenges, teamwork. Each of us, pretty much like this meeting, I'd rather prefer to be in a room, but we talk to a small box. Okay, we show up, show the photo, show our headshot. And that feeling is really interesting or weird. And how to form an effective teamwork through this virtual interaction certainly is challenging. There's a tons of people are talking about how to improve this. And also there are a lot of articles talking about that. But I guess up to now, many people are still in the process trying to find out. And this is especially challenging for people who just change the job or change the team. I know quite some people who have changed their job in the past year, and up to now, he or she have never met their supervisors physically, which made their life actually more challenging. So all I'm saying is working from home has created some opportunities, but meanwhile, also some challenges. Another one, challenges would be career development. Especially with this group audience, most of us are first generation of immigrants. Our language skill is not working to our strength, to our advantage in many cases. And how to effectively communicate through the Zoom or WebEx, that's tough. And that will create some challenges for us, how to show your job, how to show how good you are in what you're doing, how to impress your customers, how to impress your boss, how to impress your peers. Certainly, there are certain challenges. I bet many people have get this feeling, which has a direct connection to the career development in one company. Another one I want to just highlight very briefly is a health challenge. Unsurprisingly, the pandemic has triggered a wave of mental health issues across the workforce. There's a study saying that this hits the younger people even more seriously. Out of a survey, one of the survey I have seen recently, 55% have experienced mental health issues since the onset of the pandemic. And from the age group 18 to 34, 74% of them responded with they feel the impact of them. And the four of the most common issues were stress, which is 33%, anxiety, 30%, depression, 24%, loneliness or isolation, which we can understand. So this year has been a challenging year, but the good news is all of you, including myself, we have survived and have been doing really well. So as an individual professional person, I would encourage you, me myself included, just keep positive and keep pushing and keep trying, because this is a new norm, meaning we will be cutting off the trips. Even the pandemic is behind us, I hope anytime soon. We will cut off the human interactions. Even the COVID is done. So this is the new norm. And the good news is we're adapting to this one. And I think we'll just keep on learning and keep improving. Meanwhile, how we run the company, meaning as the executive of company or as a business owner, how they see the companies, how they run the companies also are changing. For example, most of American companies, most of them are super focused on productivity in the past. So moving manufacturers to Asia, to China is driven by the pursuit of productivity, just because the cost is much lower. Using myself as an example, in my almost 7 years as a senior VP of the worldwide sales organization, I manage a team of several thousand people in 30, 40 countries and serving like more than 100,000 customers. Except for we care about customer, push for new ways of engaging with them. One thing we have spent so much time on, like many business in the world, is trying to see how can we improve productivity per person. I can boast in my almost 7 years in that position, per person, sales or engineer productivity has been improved way more than 50% in my 7 years. So as a company, US companies have built up a muscle to focus on productivity, improve whenever we can. And this has made the American companies so competitive, so powerful, so innovative in the world. With the pandemic hit us, now you hear more people in the boardroom, in the executive meeting room, people talking about resilience, meaning when something happened, hit our supply chain, what do we do? How can we secure our supply chain? How can we ensure our support service to customers is not disrupted by all those? And right now we're at the stage, people are willing to pay a little bit more money to secure the supply chain, to secure the situation or extra resources. And in the past, we outsourced or even just give it out to some other countries or other companies. And this is something will have a long-term impact in any companies in the world. By the way, this is not a phenomenon in the US only. I have seen that happening. I've heard some people talking about all over the world. So this is something very interesting. And I think that this will be panned out. Very interesting, has a long-term, even social impact on us. And another one is the changing customer needs. Many people, as a customer, we know that. Internal process, I also want to highlight this one because most of our audience here are professional people. When you talk about a company, when you talk about how to run it effectively, productively, respond fast, most of the company has different process. Okay, that's a before pandemic hit us. And right now, many companies or in their boardroom or even in the startup companies I'm engaged with, people start to talk about what's happening. Can we reevaluate this process? Meaning what has made us successful in the past may not be valid anymore. Okay, this could be the internal HR system, could be R&D process, could be a customer quality issue, etc. So there are a lot of things that change, and that has a profound impact on all of the people, has a professional life. And lastly, I want to also highlight the importance of social responsibilities. Within the big corporations or even small ones, people now start to talk about more about social responsibilities because there's a pandemic has highlighted the inequality of our community or the whole world. For example, even in North Texas, 13 counties I'm talking about, there's 1 in 5 families cannot put the food onto the table every week after pandemic hit us. And for the kids, like 1 in 4 kids with family had issues to have hunger issue in the past several months. Because if you think about it, before the pandemic hit us, the Americas in the best situation in the history when it comes to hunger issue. And now it's really bad. And also this unemployment rate for Black workers are even more serious than some other ethnic people. For example, the risk to 15% versus a peak of 9% for white workers. So this highlights the importance of social responsibility. And I just want to mention one thing. For the Chinese American community, we have just launched a Ni Hao food bank initiative aiming at helping the local society to fight the hunger issue. So if you are interested in this program, trying to help the people in our community, trying to reach the image of Chinese American in community, please join us and we will fight together. And this is happening in many people's mind, in many corporate rooms, boardrooms, and in many companies. I will also want to take a moment to talk about, with all the changes, how we run the company, talking about the talent, there are also some changes on the qualifications on what to be called a talent. I guess no surprise. One thing stands out is the importance of self skills. I think Deloitte did a survey about maybe 4 months ago, and then they did some study based on that data. They came out a prediction by the year 2030, meaning 10 years down the road, almost 70% of all the available jobs are soft skills critical. Meaning, if you want to do a good job, you must have some critical soft skills. And I will touch on a few very briefly. First one is the leadership. When we talked about leadership, many people thought, hey, this is a leader for the managers. No, it's not. If you're a team member, if you are good at what you're doing, you're trying to influence the people who are working with you, trying to impact the people who make the decisions, you need to take the leadership role in whatever you're doing and trying to convince the people if you have better ideas. And this is one area many of good engineers have spent a lot of time trying to improve. And I know the CIE have spent a lot of time talking about how to develop this leadership skill. And what I can share with you is this is a lifelong learning skill. And you need learn, practice, and keep on improving. And among all the leadership important skills, there's one thing especially true for Chinese Americans, which is assertive when it comes to make a decision. I will touch on this one later because over and over and over, when I was running the big organization or I'm dealing with the talents I'm supporting right now or small companies, there are a lot of people with similar to me, first generation coming from China. When it comes to the decision making, when it comes to make a choice, it's very slow. It's with a lot of hesitations. I will touch on that very, very briefly. And this is something, even when we talked about Chinese Americans' career barriers, like we heard of the term, the bamboo selling. And when you talked about those people who make decisions, one of the most stereotype of us is lack of assertiveness. So this is something we need to learn and break it. And the second is flexibility, adaptivity, and resilient, VUCA. I will have one slide talk about it. Basically, it's talked about making decisions without a clear messages or information on hand. And this is related to assertive too. And also the importance of emotional intelligence, especially when we cannot interact face-to-face or physically. You cannot see, when you say something, you cannot talk to them, see their responses. That's tough. And how to make things happen, but not jeopardize your relationship. And when you talk about something, how to manage those subtle feelings. It's a skill, but also a mindset we need to develop. And the last one, effective communication with a passion. There was one Zoom meeting when I was trying to coach a person who was about to make a presentation to like 9 interviewers for managerial position for the first time in her life. When she talked to me, her screen was like aimed at half of her face, and her talking style is like monotone. I couldn't tell if she likes the idea of get promoted or not. So when we come to the communications, I know CIE have given a lot of trainings. I just want to highlight, there's a lot of details there. But first things first, if you want to do something, you want to convince the people, show your passion. You saw David shared his past story. I bet you can feel the passion, not only the violin, but also all the others. So the passion is very important, and with some effective communication skills. So as mentioned, I just touched on some high level important factors when it comes to work, how the company is run, and how they choose their talent. And back to one of the topics I mentioned here, new norm. The workplace is work in a VUCA kind of environment. There's
and
a
just
lot
a quick interruption. Just wanted to let you know that if you could wrap up in about a couple of minutes, that would be great.
Yeah, 2 minutes. It's a voluntary, uncertain, complex. And when you come to this kind of situation, how to make a decision that is tough, but being a leader, being an effective worker, we need to do a good job here. The last chart I showed here is the possibilities. One thing, back to the assertiveness. I've noticed many times there's one question in my mind. For example, do I need to talk to my manager? That can stop an engineer with my similar background for days. I just want to tell you, encourage you, when you have a thought, talk to your manager, be assertive, and then we figure out those ambiguity situation later. Let's go to the next slide, please. Several more, please. One more. We talked about how to have a successful career many times at the CIE, at some other events, and many people of you have been listening to me talk about this. I also want to highlight one thing, which is the last one, action. Because we know all the importance of those skills. We know the gap, but until you take the actions, nothing will happen. I still remember one of the session I had with the CIE leadership team. Many people were talking about English communication is a weak point for many of us. I was asking the people, if this were the case in past 10 years, how many people have taken the English pronunciation course? Guess what? Within that 20-some people, only 1 person raised their hand. I use this example to show you. We talked about a lot of things we can or should be doing. The point I want to highlight here is with how we work is changing, how the company will be run is changing, and how they choose the talent is changing. We as the Chinese engineers have a lot of talent capability. There are certain challenges like others. The key thing for us is stop thinking, overthinking, be assertive and take action. And once we take the action immediately, we'll figure out the rest pretty soon, because I'm 100% convinced this group of audience, very talented, decisive, and committed. And with the action taking, we will make a huge difference here. All right, that's wrap up my presentation, and I would